Back like we never left, B.D.A. Today we're here to talk about King's Haki, advanced King's Haki, and this is based off of a conversation I had recently with some of my friends, where we're just talking about the nuances of King's Haki and then the potential of it going forward. So with King's Haki is interesting. I like the route that it's traveling and where it's come, because it's no longer viewed as useless in top tier matchups. Where King's Haki in the past felt like a flex. Like if you had it, it's cool, you can knock out fodder, but that's about it. Now it has more purpose and meaning, so I absolutely love that. But before we talk about the color of the Supreme King, please hit that red button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a like as well. And without further ado, King's Haki. One Piece chapter 1010 just destroyed our expectations and gave us one of the best chapters in One Piece ever, in which we saw Luffy and Kaido going back and forth using King's Haki, or the color of the Supreme King. Something that I've seen throughout the community, that people are talking about it, and there's so many different ways people have interpreted everything that's going on. It's a bit crazy, but it is somewhat justified because there's so much going on in this chapter, especially when you incorporate things of the past, people will come to different conclusions. So I guess let's start with Zoro and what was going on with him and his King's Haki, or his color of the Supreme King. One could view Zoro's attack versus Kaido as a Haki bloom. And the reason being is that Zoro at this point, going against Kaido, he's saying he was about to use the limit of his ability. So he used everything he had in that Asura attack. So within his 9-sword style dead man's game, that according to Kaido was somewhat coded with the color of the Supreme King. So the theme of this chapter seems to be coding and the color of the Supreme King, obviously, and Zoro did it unconsciously. Now Kaido asked Zoro, hey, do you have it as well? And Zoro's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you mean, which some people took offense to, but that can easily be cleared up. Zoro's talking about King's Haki in regards to him, because early in the arc he said, yeah, I definitely don't have it, or no, I don't have King's Haki, right? Not definitely, but he said, no, I don't have King's Haki. So now he's coming back and saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I just use Asura, everything that I could, but that led to many questions. The visage of Asura and what it represents, is Oda trying to make it make more sense? Other than it being a proponent of the cursed swords, is Oda saying Asura is an embodiment of will, a personification, a visage of will, and therefore that's how Zoro unleashes his King's Haki. But there's so many ways in which this can go, because Oda could explain it as Zoro, because he's had to pull everything out of him, he basically unlocked the ability. He could always use it, but he didn't unlock it as yet. And now because he's aware, he'll be able to code his attacks the same way Luffy can, or Whitebeard and Roger. But we need some more explanation, because a lot of people are interpreting this as Asura, or what Asura is basically Conquerors Haki. And some people are jumping to the conclusion that Diablo Jambe is actually Conquerors Haki. Oda has talked about Diablo Jambe before, and Sanji's passion and him being stronger, and what that represents. Can that be a variant of will? Could that be a form of Conquerors Haki? We don't know. We need some more explanation. That takes us to Luffy. Now, before Luffy was coding his attacks, he thought back to what Hyogoro taught him in regards to the Haki that penetrates, Ryo, advanced armament. And he said that was too shallow. And then he remembered everything Kaido was doing, and he said, okay, so you can infuse your attacks with King's Haki as well. And that's when Kaido said, only a select few of the very strongest can. So here's the difficult thing. We know Luffy was using Ryo, but with this attack, is Luffy using Ryo, which is advanced armament, as well as the coding of the Conquerors Haki? We know for a fact he's coding his attacks in Conquerors Haki, but using the advanced armament, wouldn't that be a bit redundant? Initially in chapter 1010, it felt like, okay, Luffy was not touching Kaido because he's using advanced armament and he's using the coding. In chapter 1011, they both weren't touching. So then that led to the conclusion that, okay, maybe Kaido has advanced Ryo as well, or advanced armament. I think the simplest way to kind of break this down is that essentially the coding of the attacks is basically an amplifier. So it not touching goes back to what Hyogoro said, but Luffy said that was too shallow. Luffy coding his attacks now is penetrating a bit deeper. So what Luffy's doing now is not only Ryo, which is advanced armament, but he's also coding his attacks with Conquerors Haki. Now Luffy picked this up really quick, and just off of this, he told everyone, oh, I figured it out, you guys can leave now. Some people had issue with how easily he was able to pick it up, because that somewhat undermines this ability. But Luffy has always been heralded as a battle genius, because we've seen Conquerors Haki users, in which they expel their Haki, and that's used to knock out other people. But this coding is somewhat controlling this Haki, harnessing it, and using it with your attacks. I would have liked a better way for Luffy to unlock this ability, because it's just like, oh, I figured it out. You can infuse it. How? How do you go through the process of expelling it to knock out others, to now harnessing it with your attacks. The fitting conclusion one could say is Luffy learning the flow of Rio and controlling his haki better. That led to him being able to use or expel King's Haki in a way that's more efficient and use it concurrently with his Rio. That is really simplifying and minimizing just how I think advanced of a technique it is, but that's what Luffy did. He just saw Kaido do it, he got hit with it a few times, and therefore he was like, okay, now I get it, now I understand what you're doing, and then he was able to do it. The haki flow, everything he's been learning in Wano, this was the culmination for Luffy and Kaido to go back and forth using advanced armament and advanced conquerors. I like the subtlety in which Oda handled the Conquerors Haki. Of course, the first time we saw this was Whitebeard and Roger, where they weren't even touching, but based off of Hyogoro's explanation, we assumed it was just Rio, or advanced armament. Not understanding just how complex this was, where it's not only Rio, but it's also coding your attacks, and that led to a more devastating clash. In the anime recently, we saw Odin was able to use Conquerors Haki and also code his attacks in Conquerors Haki, not in the same way necessarily, but if you look close enough, it seemed very or eerily similar to what these others are doing, Luffy, Whitebeard, Roger. But this is a much stronger Odin, as opposed to the one who saw Roger and Whitebeard clash. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because now I'm thinking of Zoro, right? And for Zoro, will he eventually get to the level where he will be able to clash with Mihawk per se, assuming Mihawk has Conquerors Haki? I think it would be really unique if Mihawk doesn't have Conquerors Haki, and I plan to talk about what does advanced Conquerors mean for Mihawk versus Shanks, because that's been a heavy debate. But now there's so much speculation from the things we've seen in the past. We've seen Zoro with leakage from his blade before. We've seen the Black Lightning, but we can't just use that and say, okay, because of the Black Lightning, that means someone has Conquerors Haki, because there were several moments, or not Conquerors Haki, they're coding their attacks in Conquerors Haki, because there are several moments in the Katakuri fight, specifically the buzz cut Mochi. When he landed that attack, we saw Black Lightning, or the Black Effect. However, the Black Effect must occur before impact to indicate, in my opinion, that you're using or coding your attacks in Conquerors Haki. Some have referenced Katakuri saying there are levels to armament to say, okay, Katakuri was probably coding his attacks in Conquerors, but not to the level of Luffy. Of course, that's something I would like to believe, but I don't think so. Katakuri, as efficient as he was, would know what he's doing. I just think Katakuri was combining his Mochi with his armament, and it was just better than Luffy's. The thing is though, we saw when Luffy's clashing with Kaido, his hand was throbbing the same way it was with Katakuri. But now we know if you're coding and using Rio, the attacks would not touch. For Zoro, we do not see the impact. And so we can't really get to the depths of unconscious coding, which Zoro was doing. So I just want you guys to understand just how layered everything is. When you talk about Conquerors Haki, armament, and we're not even touching on observation, Haki in general is a very complex power system that I think has had a very basic explanation, and Oda has given us bit by bit, and so it leaves a lot open for interpretation. Hopefully, at some point we get a very detailed explanation of everything and how they interact with one another. Because how does coding your attacks interact with someone using regular armament or regular Rio? So there are a bunch of things we still have to figure out, but if we take our time and just sit through things, it slowly starts to make sense, but experiments still need to be done. We still need to see more interactions to really get to the bare bones of everything that's going on. Because again, we understand a bit and we could explain it away, but some of it will be left to speculation and assumption. Again, going back and looking at Riley's explanation, looking at Hyogoro's explanation, it was very easy to assume what Whitebeard and Roger was doing was just advanced armament. But no, there are levels to this, and the next level seems to include coding your attacks in Conquerors. I was going to talk about the future Conquerors Haki users here, but we've gone on a bit too long already. We'll save that for another video. But guys, give me your thoughts. How do you feel about Conquerors Haki and Rio? How it interacts? The reason why everyone is talking about this right now, because it's a very intriguing power system. It's an advanced application, but I think it's so clever and unique, I want to learn more about it. But guys, give me your thoughts. Make sure to like the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter at BragoDAce. Follow me on Instagram at BragoD.Ace. Thank you to my patrons. I appreciate you guys all so much. Guys, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
I start doubting me, I felt lost.